welcome back, and we are into one of our first sectorally specific panels now. This is the new CPR, the Construction Products Regulation, and we're asking about how we get towards more sustainability in construction. So I've got some great panelists with you. I'm delighted to say joining me in the studio in person is Hein Bollens, Deputy Head of Unit for the Green and Digital Twin Transition on Constructions and Standards within DG GROW in the European Commission.
Nice to
Thank you very much that you're joining us. We know also online we also have Dr. Christine Lemaitre, Chief Executive Officer at the German Sustainable Building Council. Thank you very much, Christine. Philip van Nieuwenhuysen is President of the European Builders Federation, and Alexandra Beltrao is the Product Standards Manager for Tata Steel and Chair of the SEN Working Group Strategy for the Construction Sector. Thank you all very much for joining us. I am very pleased that we're going to go into another detailed discussion on what we think can happen within this very specific sector. So I think, Heinz, let me start off, Hein, with you. The revision of the CPR was presented as part of this overall package aimed at delivering and supporting the Circular Economy Action Plan. So which sustainability elements in specific are revised within the CPR? What should we be looking out for? What are the interactions with the other regulations in terms of eco-design? Give us a broad overview on what we can expect.
Thank you so much for that question, and happy to be here today also with the participants. Indeed, it has been quite of an important milestone that we have reached so far. What we have been trying to do with the new proposal of CPR is, of course, not only addressing and looking at the environmental and climate goals that we have set earlier in the Green Deal. We have also been looking at trying to repair issues in the CPR which have been not going so well in the past, and there are different reasons why we have revised the construction product regulation. But also one important element for the revision was, in fact, the inclusion of the sustainability aspects that now also have been covered by the ESPR, the Eco-Design Sustainable Product Regulation, which you discussed before. The idea is that the ESPR would be the horizontal layer, and whereby the CPR would be the, let's say, the vertical part of it. And we would, of course, align to what is in the horizontal piece of legislation, which is the ESPR, with some specificities for the CPR regulations as such.
Well, I think that's a good place to start. I'm going to turn now to Christine. You're working for DGNB, Europe's biggest network for sustainable building. From your perspective, what is the impact of the CPR revision likely to be on the application of circularity principles in construction?
Well, I think we have to see what really the impacts are, but what we hope will happen, that we see more sustainable products, more products which will be designed to be circular. And I think especially, and I can just maybe as well come from the view of the user, so basically the architects and designers. And for them, it is very, very important to get more security on the quality of the products, to make sure that they don't have to go through the hoops and do all the research around what a good product is or what a good product is not. So I'm really hoping that we will see a higher level of quality, more transparency for products, and which make it easier to use in the design processes, in the renovation processes, to make it easier for the clients, for the architects, to make their choice and to have the security that they have selected high quality products, which as well are in the end, not waste, but ideally can be used and can go back into the cycle and can be recycled, can be reused.
Thank you, Christine. Philip van Nieuwenhuysen, let me ask you, what are the big implications for SMEs? That's the focus of our discussion today. Can you drill down into that for us?
Yes, thank you. In fact, the answer is very well summarized in the introduction of the program, but I will nevertheless elaborate on it. Our members, in collaboration with the construction experts of SBS, have been extremely active on the dossier to defend and promote the interests of construction SMEs and crafts. You should consider that 99.6% of the companies working in construction are SMEs, and the vast majority of them are craftsmen and micro enterprises. So there is a particular interest amongst our members to be active on this file. And we have been very active, therefore, in the political and technical exchanges on the CPR revision, even collaborating with FIAC and the Construction Products Europe Association on industry-oriented revision approach. Our SMEs were very anxious to finally receive the review proposal of the CPR to establish a much needed stable regulatory framework which can enable the sector to contribute to the efforts towards green and digital transition. SMEs support the development of the CPR as a single piece of EU legislation regulating construction products, and we need it to be clear and coherent. We welcome the promotion of sustainability through the CPR, and we are very motivated to contribute to the efforts needed to make construction more sustainable. However, the implications of changing to a circular economy model will be more difficult for SMEs to cope with in terms of administrative burdens and technical requirements due to their limited financial and human resources. More specifically, the extension of the scope of the CPR and the needed coherence with other pieces of European legislation, such as the Eco-Design Directive or the Waste Directive, will require time to be understood, absorbed, and implemented by the SME ecosystem. This is especially important since big, medium, and small companies in construction often have complementary roles, and thus they constitute a value chain. Let me remind you that chains are only as strong as the weakest link, so it is of the utmost importance that standards and regulation are developed to be operable by small companies and craftsmen also. So think small first. Another specific challenge for the new CPR lies in the confusing simplification procedures for micro and small enterprises. These procedures need to be pragmatically designed and comprehensive to be broadly implemented. The conditions to use the simplification procedures should be consistent and refrain from costly assessments. Moreover, a reinforced role of harmonized standards is crucial for SMEs, as they need up-to-date standards to maintain their competitiveness and their growth potential by ensuring that their products comply with EU legislation. The exchange of information facilitated by digitalization is a major opportunity for innovation, improved communication, and better efficiency. However, there are only a few glimpses of digitalization in the revision of the CPR, which could lead to a need for another revision in the medium term. And this is a concern for us too, because we want it to be future-proof from the beginning. Finally, incentives to attract qualified workers in construction are a major challenge of our sector, big, medium, small, or micro. This leads to an important need of funding dedicated to re-education. Reskilling and upskilling of construction SMEs is essential for the achievement of the twin transition. However, pieces of legislation as the CPR do not improve the attractiveness of the sector given their complexity, so we plead for less complexity. That is my first answer, my first reaction. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip. I'm sure we're going to touch on many of those elements again, including, of course, energy performance and eco-design. Let me turn, Alexandra, to you. Give me your perspective, but with a focus, for example, on standards, because we are talking about standards today. I think you might be on mute. Let's try again. Can we hear Alexandra? We cannot. Oh dear. Well, not to worry, Alexandra, try a few different tricks there and we'll see if we can get you back. In the meantime, as we did in our previous panel, we are going to launch a poll on Slido for the audience because we want you to answer the questions as well. We want to take the temperature of who's watching. We do have a poll here. It's a multiple choice, as in the last round. What is the most important barrier to sustainable construction? Is it higher prices? Is it barriers for the reuse and recycling of materials? Is it low demand, lack of expertise or knowledge? or is it a lack of common standards? And we will have a look at what the results you have there for us in the next few minutes. We'll keep an eye on that throughout the point of our discussion. Remember, you can also join that by going directly to Slido on your browser, that's slido.com or sli.do, and put in the hashtag for this event, that is standards number 4 SMEs. And remember, we also want your questions to our panellists. Let's try again. Let's see, Alexandra, I believe we still can't hear you. Let's give it one more try. Can we hear you? Alexander, no, we're shaking heads. Unfortunately, Alexander, we're going to try and get back to you through another method. But in the meantime, let me actually turn to you, Hein, and build on the point that I think that Philip was making, which is, how does this revision fit with those other bits of regulation? We mentioned eco-design, we mentioned the energy performance of buildings. How can there be enough clarity and enough coherence between them, particularly when we think about SMEs who maybe don't have the resources of larger enterprises?
Indeed, and I very welcome the points that have been made earlier. These are also things that we have heard and learned throughout the consultation process. It's the coherence of EU policies. And this is one of the criteria that we, of course, look at into the refit exercises that we have to do. Refit is when we look at the efficiency and effectiveness of EU legislations. And of course, they all try to fit nicely together. I give an example, for example, for the renovation wave. For the renovation wave, we have about 300 billion euros that we have to invest to make sure that half of the buildings are renovated within the next 10 years, which is a quite high challenge. Another element, which is a quite crucial one, is that we very often look first to the SMEs. And what the situation for the SMEs and the impact that it will have. I'm sitting here as a colleague, a representative of DG GROW, looking at SMEs and the industry angle at European level. And I can assure you that we always look and we work with our colleagues to see whether there is not a disadvantage angle for the SMEs when we produce and we propose a new piece of legislation trying to address those crucial elements. So in principle, they always hang nicely together. I must say, though, that today we have just put the proposal on the table of the Council and the European Parliament. It was a proposal which has been adopted by the College, and of course it's now up to the co-legislators, the European Parliament and the Council, to have a final say and to come to compromise on the proposal that has been made by the Commission. And also they have in their minds the coherence of EU policies when it comes to the different policies that have been pursued by the Commission, of course within the overriding context of the European Green Deal, or the Fit for 55, and of course the climate and environment discussions and the goals that we have set.
Thank you very much. Christine, let me turn to you. I'm going to ask you the same question that we asked our audience, which is, what do you see as the main barriers to sustainable construction? I'd really like to get your thoughts before we see what the audience actually said.
Well, I think there are several barriers. I think one of maybe the biggest barrier we're having is the lack of knowledge in the whole value chain, that there are different understandings of what sustainability might be or might not be. We have a lot of, say, rumors that sustainable construction is always more expensive. This is something, you know, when I introduce myself, the person I talk to is then first reaction is like, oh, sustainability, oh, this is more expensive. And I find that a bit strange. And I always answer, it's crazy how you could do that with a building you don't even know, at a location you don't even know, and basically go through all the way to the tender in order to make these kind of claims. So I think we're having a lot of rumors out there, and I think this is as well a big barrier. And I think the other thing is really accessibility to data and to information, to transparency, in a way that what I said earlier, you know, in the design and the construction process, the most important resource, and we never talk about that, is time. People never have time to do the research and to understand what is all out there. So they have to make a quick decision in a very short amount of time, and then they need a certain kind of security. So I think this transparency and to be able to trust and to rely on regulation and to understand what does it mean, what kind of product quality can I really rely on, I think this is one of the barriers we're facing. So it's a multi problem, let's say, on barriers.
Well, thank you. Philip, the same question to you. I'm keen to know what people see as the big barriers to this possibility of sustainable construction. I mean, why are we seeing difficulties? Why do we even need all of these new policy proposals? Do you see a particular trend?
In fact, what Christine said, it's complexity of regulation, and that is a barrier, and we would have preferred to have a more holistic approach, meaning, for instance, that there would be a digitalized system on which you can base all the other aspects of the construction. So, for instance, if you want a small company to comply to certain standards, for him it should be very easy to put just a small sign on his tablet while he is doing his constructing, so that he can afterwards just make a printout or a hard copy on his computer that he complied with all the different aspects that are in this regulatory framework for sustainable construction. Because if you don't facilitate it and you make it an administrative burden, he will turn more to his daily bread, where he earns his money, working hard and not having enough time to register, in fact, the simple requirements that he should comply to.
Well, Hein, I'm going to ask you to react to that. I'm sure it's not the first time you've heard about people being concerned about regulatory burden and compliance, which is fine if you're a big organisation, but SMEs, they do feel it.
Yes. Let me immediately jump into this particular point, and then I would like to come back to, in fact, what was said earlier with regard to the skills and the incentives given and the difficulties to understand what sustainability actually means. For example, with regard to better understanding pieces of legislation, the regulatory framework for construction product regulation. For example, yesterday we have organized a first Q&A session with stakeholders, with more than 500 participants, where we have gone through all the different questions that we have received from NGOs, from stakeholders and industry, those particular questions that they have had on the proposal for the construction product regulation. It was a successful Q&A session, which took the entire morning, a little bit longer. We will try now to cluster those questions and answers, also to bring that to the public at a certain point in time, that there is a broad knowledge and better understanding about what we have put on the table and what the Council and the Parliament are discussing. A point that was made earlier with regard to the skills and reskilling and upskilling, it's rather upskilling of the workforce and the incentives. I would like to mention here that recently in the month of February, we have agreed with industry and stakeholders on a pact for skills for construction. And the pact for skills has been supported by the biggest associations and industries and NGOs out there for construction, to make sure that we have a pathway to indeed upskill the workforce into that new green and digital transition. And on the last point, and I would like to build on that pathway and that twin transition, is about the understanding what sustainability means, what green means, what digital means. And to make that a little bit more understandable, at the end of last year, we have issued in the Commission a transition pathway for construction. This was done together with the High Level Construction Forum, which is our unique interlocutor with a broad base of industry and stakeholders. And the transition pathway is looking at three elements. It's looking at the resilience of the sector, the green and the digital. We are working again and discussing with the sector the different outcomes that we might see by the end of this year. But the transition pathway, as we produced it by the end of last year, is part of the industrial strategy at European level, where the construction sector was pointed as one of the priority ones of the 14 ecosystems that we know. And our commissioner has put construction as one of the priority sectors to address, given the difficulties and challenges that it is meeting today in the current economic situation.
Well, you did mention the current economic situation. Of course, we see ourselves coming out of sort of perma-crises now, and supply chains and resilience are the two big key words. Can we, let's see one more time, maybe if we have got Alexandra. Have we sorted out the sound gremlins, Alexandra?
Can you hear me? Thanks.
In that case, I'm going to give you the unenviable challenge of reacting to everything you've heard so far in a sort of a concise way, and to lead on into your perspective.
Yeah, if I may, I would like to go back to the role of standards, and to highlight three important aspects. I'm sure there are more. The first one is that standards provide the harmonized technical language on sustainability, and this is really important to have a good communication between all the stakeholders involved in the CPR framework, which is really complex and has lots of stakeholders involved, the manufacturers, other economic operators. Is even more relevant with the possibility of having used products placed on the market. So we also have the end users, the Commission, member states, and so on. So I think this is a really important role for standards. The second one is, I would like to steal something that was said in the previous panel by Robin. It's about motivation. So, and I think that standards allow the industry buy-in. So I think because industry is involved in the development of standards, and because they are responsible for the introduction of circularity aspects in standards, they think that they more easily will abide to these aspects they themselves put in the standards. And I think that this is important if we think about the new draft of the CPR that foresees a parallel route where we have a delegated act instead of standards in exceptional conditions. But I think that we will lose this that is given by standards, that is the industry buy-in. And lastly, because we are talking about SMEs, I know that some SMEs are not always involved directly in standardization. I think we'll talk about that later. But they always use standards, and standards are part of their processes, are part of their activities. So by using these circularity aspects in standards, we are promoting sustainability, because these standards will be used by companies, they'll be translated into the national standards throughout Europe. So this is a way of promoting circularity and sustainability.
Thank you, Alexandra. I know that was a tough job to try and sum it all up in one go. Let's have a look now at the results of our Slido poll, the poll that you've been able to carry out there. What is the biggest barrier to sustainable construction? Well, it seems that more than half of you think it is barriers for the reuse and recycling of the materials themselves. Nearly 30% think it's a lack of expertise or knowledge. 19% think it's higher prices, and 0% think it's about low demand. So it's really a practical, hands-on problem, I think, that we're seeing there reflected in that. Let me come back, Philip, to you. Are you surprised by the results of that poll, or what is the reaction that people see that it's the lack of ability to reuse and recycle materials is one of the biggest barriers?
Well, I'm not all that surprised. I think prices, if you scale up in the long term, will be lower, and I think also that the general consensus about overusing the natural resources is growing and growing, so people are willing to pay a little more. And as I said in my former reaction, in fact, that is confirming what the majority answers. It's just the barriers that we meet, and we should have a clear view of all these barriers and try to start to build a framework, the complete framework, so that you can determine a horizon where people have to work to. And that is what I meant with the holistic approach. If you start by making it easier to have a digital framework applied by everyone, then it's also easier to apply the standards and work with them and so on. So I hope you get the drift of my answer.
I'd like you to build on that, if you could, a little bit about the future of circularity in construction, and maybe what do we need beyond the CPR revision to achieve true circularity?
Yeah, and this is something actually I wanted to add. I think, especially when you talk about small businesses, I think one of the barriers is as well that they know that circularity at the moment is a very theoretical concept, because they know at the moment that it doesn't work this way. And I think if we really want to become truly circular, I think we have to as well basically close the loop when it comes to knowledge. So I think we have to look at the deconstruction processes, of the deconstruction infrastructure, of basically where are materials being transported, how can recycled materials be accessed. And I think this is like the key point, and especially in the construction industry, we have a lot of small businesses working in their local environment. And for them, it has to be practical, and it has to be something they can really tap into and can access. And if they know that at the moment, I can just say it for Germany, that, if you deconstruct a building today, the soil they dig out, the mineral materials they get out of the buildings, there's no recycling really happening, because it's still not expensive enough. Material is being transported in average like 300 kilometers across Europe with big trucks or by boat. And we see a lot of deconstruction companies there at the same time, small construction companies, because then they're able to close the loop for themselves if they basically get the material out and they can use it somewhere else. And I think that goes through the whole value chain. It doesn't matter in which products you're looking at, and especially the products where we see, and what we need if we talk about sustainability, is we need long lifespans. So what we build today has to actually last ideally like 100 years. And then the question is, what happens in 100 years? And what we deconstruct today was never designed for circularity. And I think this is kind of where we maybe have to bring down the theoretical model, and where we have to adapt it as well from other sectors. And I always say it's maybe a bit radical, but a building is not a washing machine. It works differently. We have different processes. We have different lifespans of a building. And I think their regulation has to really maybe go a little bit bottom up and really understand where the points where it just doesn't happen today in the market, and what do we need to change that happens in the market. Because to just say circularity is not going to make that transformation. We need to, as I said, we have to build the infrastructure. We have to as well work with the deconstruction companies, with recycling facilities. Cities have to provide the space so material can be stored, because that is another challenge they face. So I think this is a more bottom up to bring these two worlds together, I think is what we need to become really circular in the construction industry.
It's interesting that although you're talking from a different sector, you're actually very much echoing what Robin on the first panel said about a holistic approach and bottom up. I see we've got some questions coming in from our audience, and I will remind those of you joining online that you can ask questions. It should be to the right of your screen. If you can't see it, you may have the video on full screen, so just reduce that and you'll be able to type in your question there. I'm going to start with one, I think, that's both to Hein and to Alexandra, asking how the Commission and SEN are cooperating to include SMEs in the revised standardisation system. Hein, let me hear from you first.
Yeah, it's interesting because I have a past life in standardisation, and I'm very happy to be here amongst the audience for the Friends of Standardisation and the Friends of Construction now, by the way. The cooperation which is taking place is always based, because there are two elements, the European Standardization Regulation and you have the Construction Product Regulation. In the European Standardization Regulation, you have a very strong point on inclusiveness, which is unique in the world with regard to the European standardization system, the inclusiveness element, and also the SMEs have a particular attention there. So there is a very good and working method within SEN, but also within the Commission, to cooperate in this triangle of SEN, Commission, and the SMEs, where the Commission, of course, is putting forward standardization requests, mandates, as we know it. With regard to the construction product regulation, we are for the moment involved with stakeholders, SMEs, SEN, industry, member states, what we call in the construction acquis process. And the construction acquis process is for the moment trying to build a bridge between the current construction product regulation and the new one, to make sure that we are ready with the right and appropriate standards, state-of-the-art, and also linked to up-to-date and state-of-the-art standardization requests. And all of this is happening within this very nice triangle of Commission, SEN, SMEs, but also other parties involved, which is for us a highly important issue, is the inclusiveness element.
Alexandra, from your perspective as the chair of one of the SEN working groups on construction, tell us what you see as the main elements of cooperation and involvement of SMEs.
Well, I have to agree with what Hans said. No, that there is a system in place, under the regulation for standardization, not only for construction, but for all the pieces of legislation that are supported by standards. And there is a special attention given to SMEs and how they can be part of that process. Specifically, talking about the CPR, yes, there is this acquis process undergoing that is organized by the Commission, where we have several stakeholders participating. But I think that in that case, it is a little bit more difficult for SMEs to be involved because they have to be involved through the member states, probably. I know that SEN is also participating, but I think it's always better if this collaboration, if this participation is done through the SEN standardization system. That's why I was saying before that the new CPR foresees the possibility of the Commission to develop delegated acts in case the standardization system is not working. But this is something really to be only used exceptionally to avoid, because I think that in that case, SMEs will have less opportunities to participate.
Thank you very much. Now, Hein, as always, when there's a new proposal out, people have a lot of very specific technical questions for the Commission. Just a couple of quick ones here, if you have them under your purview. The new CPR sets the ground for the development of environmental product requirements. We don't see any implementation plan yet. When will that be developed? And then another question, for some SMEs, the European assessment document or the European technical assessment route is actually more attractive. And the questioner there is wondering, why will the EADs no longer be considered as the highest technical standards?
Let me go for the last question first. We will keep the IOTA route as it is, and we will keep it as well for the innovative part of the products which are not covered by the harmonized zone for the moment, and that will not change in the future. With regard to that possible implementation pathway that we see in implementing the environmental footprint and requirements, this is something that we actually will do once the Council and the Parliament have come to an agreement on the proposal of the Commission. Of course, we're working on it already with stakeholders, and we're anticipating a little bit those processes. But the negotiation process in the Council Parliament has just started, so we expect this to be somehow concluded, possibly next year or maybe after, and then we possibly know what the final outcome will be of the CPR proposal, and then of course we can come out with some implementing provisions and guidelines for the CPR.
Well, I put you on the spot, Hein, with the questions from our audience. I'm going to, Christine and Philip, put you guys on the spot and tell you, ask what you want from the Commission as part of this. You know, what is your demand that Hein and his colleagues consider in terms of bringing construction SMEs on board to make a more sustainable future?
You're abusing my presence.
I'm absolutely abusing your presence, Hein, to get these questions to you. Christine, I'll let you go first.
Well, this is great. So we can wish whatever we want and then will come reality. Yeah. No, I think, what I said in the beginning. I mean, what we would like to see is that we raise the bar for sustainable products, that we as well harmonize. I think that has been said already several times, that we close the loop and that we make the connection if we talk about sustainable products. What does it mean when it comes to circularity? What does it as well mean for the lifespan of products? And I think what is quite important, and I wanted to say that earlier, is, and I think we need a certain kind of honesty. Just because there are certain terms being used in regulation or in terms, it doesn't mean that, what is sustainable today. So sustainability is more a process. And I think we need roadmaps for that. I think we need a certain kind of transparency on where we stand and where it will go. Because I think, especially for small businesses, sometimes it's really the question, do I start now or do I wait until they revise it again? So I think we need more transparency in terms of what is coming, where are we now? And I think we need terms where basically as well outside of our expert world, the people understand what we mean in terms of reaching the Paris Agreement or reaching certain goals. So yeah, just some easy things, I think, to fulfill. Thank you.
Philip, your big ask, your Christmas wish list for the Commission.
Thank you. Christine already mentioned harmonization because not everything is being governed by European regulation and standards. So on the national level, I think a lot of harmonization can still be done, especially in the field of responsibility, because if responsibility is for the products you make is harmonized, then it will be easier to apply the standards also. It will be stimulated to apply them, sorry. And I think there could be some stimulus in making small ecosystems of cooperation between SMEs working on a local level in order to, for instance, to do the urban mining, which was mentioned earlier, because if on the one hand a specialist has to demolish something, or another one could reuse it, but it doesn't go in the work of the first one. So you need to stimulate cooperation. Furthermore, I think SMEs need a stable, coherent and well-defined policy framework with comprehensive requirements. And the Commission needs to act with proportion regarding additional requirements and provide the means to support construction SMEs in their efforts and challenges to make the European built environment green. I think simplifying as much as possible the technical assessments will work also. And we wanted the European Commission to ensure that the CPR is the only piece of European legislation regulating construction products in order to avoid overlaps and legal uncertainty in the market. And I think that the Commission should better consider the message jointly shared by the main players in the construction industry as to what the sector expects and requires from CPR to prosper while contributing to environmental efforts and addressing digital progress. So our companies are the hands that will deliver mainly the renovation wave and the ambitions of the EU Green Deal regarding built environment. So not taking the needs and warnings into account would severely limit the ability of our companies to deliver sustainability ambitions for the buildings.
Thank you, Philip. Before I get a reaction from Hein, Alexandra, perhaps you'll give us a sneak peek into what the Senelec's response to the Commission consultation will be. What are going to be the key takeaways from you?
Well, I think that what Senelec wish is to have a good collaboration and communication with the Commission, which will allow the standards to be published and cited in the official journal. So we want to avoid the situations that are described now in Article 4.3, which is a list of things that can go wrong and will force the Commission to develop a delegated act to replace a standard. So in cases where the standards are not published on time, they don't cover essential characteristics, they don't cover regulatory needs of member states, or they are not in line with the EU environmental legislation and ambition. So, and to make sure that we cover all these things in the standards, a good collaboration, communication between SAN and the Commission is necessary.
And thank you to all my three remote speakers. Hein, you have got about 1.5 minutes to react to all those requests.
That's great, thank you so much. I would like to go back to the survey that was organized, and one of the points was the lack of availability. This is, I think, an indication of what was said earlier, is that we had to produce a revision of the current CPR to have a forward-looking piece of legislation, a legal framework that is giving legal stability to the industry. And therefore also we had to build in some future-proof elements with regard to the climate and the environmental goals that we have set. And in particular, the regulation, the proposal is speaking about reuse, recyclability, it's talking about longer use, looking at those products groups. So this is one of the concerns that have been expressed. So I like very much that point that was made, and in fact this is a little bit confirming one of the reasons why we have put forward the revision of the current CPR. And this was, of course, linked to raising the bar. With regard to the harmonization that was just said, also with regard to the member states tackling this completely differently, one of the issues that we have discovered as well is that market surveillance in the member states is not working well. There is a lack of resources, be it human resources, financial, and also through that piece of legislation, the revision that we have put forward, we try also to tackle the issue of market surveillance to make sure that there is a level playing field for all actors and the businesses dealing with construction products. Also with regard to the stability and the resilience of the sector, let me also say that in the national plans that have been submitted towards the Commission in the Recovery and Resilience Facility that has been put forward in the post-pandemic era situation, that member states have proposed for about 60 billion euros of financial support to the construction sector to make all of this happen. And now for the last point with regard to standardization. The acquis process also has one objective, that we get from the member states their regulatory needs up front and not at the very end. So this will also help to speed up a little bit the process, that we better understand what needs to be done. And also secondly, with regard to the cooperation, the communication as just mentioned, we have set up, together with the European Standardization Organization, Sensenelec and ETSI, a task force to look at how mandate standardization requests should be drafted, legally sound, and also responding to the market needs. So these are the different elements which we hope will improve the overall situation, especially for the construction products and the SMEs. Let me also say about the SMEs, actually, that the proposal has a very important feature now, a little bit building on what already exists, is that micro-enterprises can be excluded from some provisions and obligations in the new proposal at national level. So also this is particularly addressing the needs, the strong needs of the SMEs in the construction product field.
Thank you very much for being here in person to take all those questions from our speakers. And thank you very much to those of you online who had a great conversation, as well as, of course, our audience for your questions as well. Stay with us, because we will be turning in just a moment to our last sectoral panel, our last panel of the day, in fact, and we are going to be looking at standards in the sustainable textile sector. So what we're going to be looking at is, like the construction industry, the textile sector has a huge environmental impact, which creates the possibility for some low-hanging fruit to really develop on Europe's aims, like the European Green Deal. So we're going to be looking a little bit at the strategy for sustainable and circular textiles. That's coming up next, so stay with us.
Can I just double check my audio?
Well, welcome back to our final panel today, where, as I mentioned, we are looking at the standards for sustainable textiles. Now, the EU aims to build up a textile industry by fostering sustainable textile design, boosting the circular business models and reducing waste. It's a trio of options. It's one way to help develop that sustainable and green future that we're all talking about. Joining me to discuss this important area is Valeria Botta, Programme Manager at ECOS, Jan Lamme, CEO of Lamme Textile Behir and co-founder of Sibutex, and also Andrea Rechtsteiner, who is the SBS expert and chair of the Sustainability Topic Group at the Senelec Sector Forum on PPE, and Maria Rancon,